Interview with a woman prosecutors say was the mastermind of Minnesota's biggest COVID-era fraud scheme. 44-year-old Amy Bach is her name. She's not part of the Somali community. Last year, she was convicted of orchestrating a $250 million plot to defraud government program to feed hungry kids.
There's been so much focus on the Somali community here in Minnesota because of the widespread fraud, and most of the suspects charged and convicted in the schemes, they are from the Somali community. But as you mentioned, the mastermind, according to prosecutors, federal prosecutors, she is not Somali. And Amy Bach, when we spoke to her, it's rare for someone to speak with us in federal custody, but she expressed some regrets and defended her actions.
We were allowed 1 hour to speak with Amy Bach over a video call from her Minnesota jail cell.
Now I can hear you, yes.
Until she was arrested in 2022, Bach led Feeding Our Future. The now infamous nonprofit signed up restaurants and caterers, many from Minnesota's large Somali community, to receive taxpayer money for providing meals to children in need.
During COVID, for obvious reasons, parents were allowed to come and pick up meals. So we suddenly were able to reach more children.
But prosecutors said it turned into something else, the nation's largest COVID-era fraud, with Bach as its mastermind.
Are you the mastermind of this scheme?
Absolutely not. I believe in accountability. If I had done this, I would have pled guilty. I wouldn't have gone to trial. I wouldn't have put my children and my family through what we've been through. I've lost everything.
While Bach's attorney provided this video showing stacks of food, prosecutors say Bach and the businesses she recruited stole tens of millions of federal dollars, spending it on luxury cars, real estate ventures, and vacations.
I wish I could go back and do things differently, stop things, catch things. At that point in time, I believed we were doing everything in our power to protect the program.
But in 2021, Bach sued the state agency that oversaw the meal program, alleging its scrutiny of Somali applicants was, quote, discriminatory.
How do you think state officials took that?
Nobody wants to be labeled as being racist.
Minnesota officials told a state watchdog the threat of legal consequences and negative media attention intimidated them into easing off.
The notion that a state government is paralyzed and has to allow this level of fraud because they were afraid of what I might do in a lawsuit is preposterous.
Help me welcome Amy Bach.
In Minnesota's large Somali community, one leader called her a modern-day Robin Hood.
The community deserves this. The children need this.
In 2019, the nonprofit submitted $3 million worth of meal claims. 2 years later, it submitted nearly $200 million.
All of a sudden, you're cutting $200 million worth of checks. How do you not see that as major red flags and keep this going?
We relied on the state. We told the state, this site is going to operate at this address, this day, this time, and this number of children. The state would then tell us that's approved.
Prosecutors also accused Bach of collecting bribes and kickbacks from meal site operators. At trial, they revealed text messages where she compared Feeding Our Future to the mob.
Are you a mob boss?
Absolutely not. No.
Were you personally benefiting from any of it?
I collected my salary, and that was all that was collected.
Didn't federal agents find gold jewelry, cash in your closet?
They found minimal jewelry. I believe it was like 2 pair of earrings, a bracelet, a watch. There was some cash there.
At trial, Bach took the stand, but the jury didn't buy her story. Within hours, they convicted her on all counts. Last month, a judge ordered her to forfeit more than $5 million in proceeds from the fraud.
Minnesota officials have defended their actions, noting that it was state employees who actually first contacted the FBI about implications in the fraud scheme. So far, 78 defendants connected to Feeding Our Future. Remember, just Feeding Our Future. There are other social service schemes at play. They have been charged, more than 60 pleading guilty or convicted at trial. Bach herself is awaiting sentencing, and she faces decades in prison.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Polito Realities. We have been hearing about the fraud cases happening in Minnesota, and whenever we hear about the fraud cases, they are connected to one community. which is the Somali community. And whenever we could hear about those frauds, we just believed what was said, and many of us did not question. But large-scale fraud does not work without systems. These fraud cases do not work without approvals and also people in control. So when the investigations became deep, it became clear that some of the most powerful figures were connected to the schemes which were blamed on one single community. This isn't about defending the crimes happening in Minnesota. It's about asking why the blame shifted only to one community while the power behind the system stayed mostly invisible. Watch with me the reaction clips that I have with me, and let us find out which figure, which person or which people are now being involved in the Somali fraud cases. If you are new here, take a minute to subscribe, to like, and to share today's video. Stay tuned.
Hey, what do you mean they found the leader of the Somali fucking thing out in Minnesota? And y'all baffled it's a white lady. Motherfucker, we've known it's a white lady the entire time this has been in the news cycle. This entire time, we've known it's a white lady. The fact that everyone got stuck on the Somali part was fucking racist as shit. But the ringleader behind this shit, oh, is good old-fashioned white Americans doing fucking white-collar crimes.
Years ago, I had a manager that told me that middle-aged white women are the biggest thieves. He said it's always the ones that you don't expect, but they are the biggest thieves when it comes to anything like retail or whatnot. Take his word, don't take mine, okay? But when I just saw that news article about Amy Bach in Minnesota defrauding the government for almost $250 million or whatnot, or planning to, whatever the fuck, it's white women. It's always the ones you don't think about. It's the white woman. And then they try to cry their white tears to get out of it. I'm telling y'all, keep your eyes out.
Hey y'all, so happy new year to everyone, except for the Trump administration, anybody who voted for Donald Trump. But I want to talk about this whole daycare situation because I've been quiet on it, but I'm getting tired of having to tell people in comments or explain this to people. So I'm just going to make a video about it. The whole situation in Minnesota with the Somalis is a lie. Okay. The reality is, yes, there were people running fake daycares. One of them in particular was a white woman named Amy Bach. She was the biggest one that was running this scheme. Okay, so here we have it. So Amy Bach, she was the ringleader. This white woman received COVID dollars under the Trump administration. It was the Biden administration in 2022, his FBI raided her place and subsequently found the fraud. There were other daycares that were supposedly doing this fraud or whatever, but the daycare that guy, and his name is escaping me right now, but he's the one who started a lot of this ruckus. When he went to that supposed daycare, he went to the back door. That daycare has been closed down for all kinds of violations for quite a while now. It's actually a restaurant, and when you went around to the front, you could see it was a restaurant. It's no longer daycare and hasn't been. But he created this video to get everybody all worked up, and now everybody's on this whole, the Somali stole this money. Actually, it was a whole white woman. Now, there were Somali people that were working with her, and like 40 of them did get arrested along with her. But when they talked to him about her work practices, this woman was like an awful boss who basically kind of forced and put a lot of this stuff on those people. So a lot of them took plea deals, etc. And we need to notate that there were actually Somalis were the ones who whistle blew on this woman. Okay, so the Biden administration actually had all this done in 2022. The woman went to trial in March of 2025 and was convicted. She just hasn't been sentenced yet. So the reality is this is being blown up and made more of a deal because white people love to try to make, if you try to make any other minority seem like they're doing some fraud, it gives the Trump supporters, the MAGAs, something to feel like, oh, this is what we wanted. This is what we voted for. This is what Trump is doing. And now Trump has released that he's actually going to stall money from them until they can prove federal funding to these states, especially specifically Minnesota, until they can prove the daycares on frauds. But that was already determined. They've already all been investigated. Like the state already did all of this. But because y'all didn't hear about it, because it was state news in Minnesota, it's being brought up now because they're trying to take your attention away from the Epstein files. And so now it's being brought up, and all I hear is people saying is the Somalis were doing fraud. The Somalis were doing fraud. No, it was a white woman named Amy Bach doing the fraud. Somalis worked for her. She was the ringleader, and she's been asked to forfeit $5.2 million. It wasn't the Somalis. And y'all need to get that shit straight. This is why you need to be looking up stuff, doing your research, and when you just see a video, stop just believing it. Because that guy literally was actually a news person, went back out there with him, and they were saying to him, well, why would a daycare, why would you go in the back? And he's like, a daycare should have a reception center. And they had to tell him that, like, most daycares, you have to be buzzed in. Most daycares are locked, so nobody can just walk in. So what that also tells me is if this man is married and has kids, he don't bother with taking his kids to daycare or nothing. So, yeah, I think that is something that y'all need to really start paying attention to. And when people put stuff out there, sometimes cross-check and fact check, especially when there's someone that's a MAGA, because they're always going to make it to be the minority being the bad guy. And at no point did this guy point out that this white woman actually was the ringleader. Yeah. As usual suspects. It's not usually us. Share this so people can get informed.
For a long time, fraud stories coming out of Minnesota have always followed the same pattern. The same community kept being mentioned until it stopped sounding like an allegation and started sounding like a conclusion. Over time, people have always accepted the narrative without asking how fraud at that scale actually works. Large amounts of money don't move because of the individuals at the bottom. They move through systems, through organizations, paperwork, approvals, and oversight structures that are supposed to exist for a reason. And when investigators went deeper into these cases, the story became more complicated than what the public had been told. The fraud wasn't just happening inside one community. There was a structure behind it, and that structure had leadership. Some of the people who controlled or enabled that system were not Somalis at all. In fact, one of the central figures connected to how the system operated was a white woman by the name Amy Bach. That detail matters because it challenges the idea that this was not ever about one community acting alone. And now, what is interesting is that even after this information is now public, the narrative didn't really change. The headlines stayed mostly the same. That tells us something important about how stories are framed. Once a narrative is established, correcting it becomes harder than even creating that narrative. Accusations travel faster than context, and complexity doesn't spread as easily as blame. This is why this discussion matters beyond Minnesota. It shows how power and accountability don't always line up in public storytelling. Crimes get simplified, communities get labeled, and also the systems get ignored. Questioning this doesn't mean we are excusing the fraud. It means that we are trying to accept a partial story. If we want real accountability, then we have to look at who built the system, who benefited from that system, and why some people carry the blame while others stay in the background. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. You have been watching Polito Realities. Until next time, be grounded.